A neighbor, seemingly harmless, yet their testimony has reignited the shockwaves of Jean Hackman's case. Living just steps from Hackman's home, this neighbor abruptly altered their story after weeks of silence. Her staggering revelations forced police to reopen the entire file, left the family reeling, and set public opinion ablaze. What did she witness on that fateful night? And why has she only now found the courage to speak? A shadowy truth is creeping into view. Can we bear to face it? Chapter 1. The Quiet Before the Storm. Jean Hackman, a Hollywood legend who once commanded the silver screen with unforgettable roles, chose to step away from the spotlight to savor his final years in Santa Fe, New Mexico. No extravagance, no glamour, no scandals. That was the life he and his wife, Betsy, yearned for. Hackman's mansion was more than a mere dwelling. Spanning over 9,000 square feet, it was enveloped by Santa Fe's wild yet tranquil landscape. Unlike other Hollywood stars with properties scattered far and wide, Hackman picked one sole place to call home, a true haven after a lifetime devoted to cinema. In those years, Hackman cared little for past glories. He relished life's simplicity. Mornings kicked off with a steaming coffee, a few strokes on his easel, then strolls through the garden, feeling the cool breeze rustle through the branches. If Hollywood thrived on fleeting romances, Jean Hackman and Betsy stood as proof of lasting devotion. They met in the 1980s when Betsy was a young pianist. Though Hackman had a prior marriage, meeting Betsy convinced him he'd found his true life's partner. Together they weathered over 3 decades, unassuming, understated. Betsy pursued her love of music, while Hackman turned to painting and writing books. Neither chased fame nor craved headlines. They sought only a quiet life, side by side. A simple life, but how strangely so. Though Hackman kept to himself, neighbors often saw him around. Each morning, he'd drive out for the paper, sometimes stopping by a familiar cafe. The owner still recalls a seasoned man, still striking, with keen eyes brimming with quiet thoughts. Jean didn't talk much, but when he did, you'd want to listen, a neighbor remarked. Yet one thing stirred curiosity. Hackman never opened his door to strangers. Even the closest neighbors rarely crossed his threshold. That mansion was a private stronghold, shared only by him and Betsy. Over time, whispers began to swirl. Why did Hackman isolate himself so thoroughly? Was he hiding something in that vast house? Back then, such questions were mere idle chatter. No one foresaw the tragic chain of events about to unfold, altering everything. Neighbors noticed something odd about 2 weeks before the upheaval. Hackman stopped his usual drives for the paper. The mansion's lights blazed all night as if someone were restless or keeping watch. Betsy vanished from sight, though she'd typically pop by the nearby market for groceries. No one knew what brewed within that secluded estate. One neighbor recalled, "I remember a late night when I heard an odd sound from his place, not arguing or shouting, but something else, a noise I can't quite pin down." Yet no one pegged it as a sign of doom. No one imagined that within days, neither Jean Hackman nor Betsy would be seen again. One morning, the mail carrier noticed newspapers piling up untouched at Hackman's door. Neighbors began to take note. No stirrings from the house, no one coming or going, no sounds from within. That's when police were summoned. And when they entered, what they found rocked Hollywood to its core. The way Jean Hackman faded, the way that mansion turned into a silent shell, was just the prelude to a tale more harrowing than any film he'd starred in. Because just when people thought they'd grasped what happened, a neighbor's jolting testimony changed it all. This story was only beginning. Chapter 2. The Mysterious Illness That No One Saw Coming. Betsy passing didn't just stun neighbors, it unleashed a cascade of unanswerable questions. The woman who'd shared over 30 years with Jean Hackman, a steadfast pillar for the Hollywood titan, now departed in baffling circumstances. Betsy was found in the bathroom on a bleak February afternoon. When police entered Hackman's mansion, none could have guessed the first sight would haunt them forever. Betsy slumped beside the heater, her head resting lightly against the tub's edge, as if asleep. Thyroid medication packets littered the floor, some pills intact, others crushed to bits. Notably, the room was pristine, no signs of a tussle or mishap, no wounds, no marks of outside force. But Betsy was gone. What had happened? When the forensic report emerged, the mystery deepened. Official cause of death: hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, HPS, a rare illness triggered by a virus from rodents. This disease strikes the lungs and breathing, starting with flu-like symptoms that swiftly worsen, leading to breathing struggles, lung failure, and total organ collapse. But here's the hitch. No trace of rodents appeared in Hackman's home. No nests, no droppings, nothing to suggest the virus's presence. What did this mean? Police scoured the mansion for clues. Under flashlight beams, they probed every dark corner, every door crack, every cabinet, any spot rodents might lurk. But they found nothing. The garden was checked too. Here, the first hint surfaced. Faint, weathered paw prints. A few old rodent droppings, possibly months stale. But no proof rodents had breached the house. So how had Betsy contracted the virus? And more crucially, why had no one noticed anything amiss until it was too late? Another oddity cropped up in the forensic report. Betsy's death was estimated around February 11th. Yet her body wasn't found for days after. In that span, no one clocked her absence. No calls from Betsy, no sightings of her stepping out. Even the delivery man got no requests from the Hackman estate. An eerie quiet stretched for a week, but something grimmer loomed. Jean Hackman vanished in that time, too. A neighbor, Linda Brooks, said something chilling. I figured Jean was off somewhere, but one thing sticks with me. On February 10th night, I saw their lights flickering on and off like someone was moving through every room. Then, it all went still. What did this imply? Jean Hackman was in that house when Betsy fell ill. But why didn't he call for help? Why didn't anyone rush Betsy to a hospital? Why could a man who'd played bold, brilliant figures on screen lose all grip in his own home? Could Jean Hackman have known something no one else did? Once Betsy's death report hit, the media pounced. But instead of clarity, they muddied the waters further. A theory took root. Betsy couldn't have caught hantavirus indoors, so where did it come from? Where was Jean Hackman in the days that followed? Why did the FBI suddenly step in when this seemed no crime at all? These questions lack answers, but one thing's clear. The story's far from over. Chapter 3. The shocking truth. Was Jean left to die alone? Jean Hackman's tale veered sharply when a witness emerged with testimony potent enough to upend every prior assumption. That witness was Barbara Lenehan, the neighbor across from Jean's estate. And what she shared changed everything. Barbara Lenehan wasn't one to meddle. But when news of Jean Hackman's passing broke, something felt off to her. She recalled that just days before Betsy's death, she'd seen Betsy strolling in the backyard, smiling at her in a chance meeting. Betsy looked perfectly fine. I saw no hint of sickness. So how could she be gone so suddenly in less than a week? It just doesn't add up. If Betsy was truly well before her end, what felled her so fast? And more pressing, how did Jean Hackman spend his final days? With Betsy gone, Jean Hackman was left alone in that sprawling house. And here, the story turns strange and grim. Jean Hackman was past 90. Diagnosed with severe Alzheimer's, his memory and awareness had crumbled badly. Yet no one imagined that for nearly 2 weeks after Betsy's passing, not a soul came to tend him. No family, no friends, no one. What happened after Betsy's death remains a puzzle. But from gathered evidence, a bleak picture forms. Jean wandered his own home, lost in confusion he couldn't fathom. He didn't grasp what happened to Betsy, unaware she'd passed. No one cooked for him, no one brought him food. The house phone worked, but Jean didn't call, or perhaps forgot how. Days dragged on, no meals, no proper water, no one to speak to. Jean Hackman, Hollywood's titan who'd played fierce, clever souls, was now trapped in his own estate, blind to his creeping decline. When police found Jean Hackman's body on February 26th, he'd been gone over a week, likely since around February 18th. A big question arose. What took him? The autopsy report stunned. Jean Hackman's stomach was utterly empty. No sign he'd eaten in days. His body was gravely weakened, vital signs perilously low. The verdict: he likely passed from exhaustion and malnutrition. A man who'd scaled Hollywood's heights, a legend, departed in solitude and despair. Once this truth broke, outrage erupted. Why didn't anyone see Jean Hackman was in peril? Why were no medics or caregivers there after Betsy's death? How could a legend be forsaken like this? Many felt Jean Hackman might have lived longer with timely care, but the harsh reality was he'd been abandoned in his own home, alone to his last breath. Jean Hackman had been an emblem of might, wit, and grit. But when Hollywood's lights dimmed, when fame receded, he was left with an empty house and a bitter truth. No one remembered him. No grand memorials, no glowing write-ups of his legacy. Nothing. Barbara Lenehan said something that chilled all. He deserved a better ending than this, but it's like someone decided he shouldn't be remembered. A forgettable close for a legend who shouldn't fade. And this was just the start, for the full truth still lay hidden. Chapter 4. A Mansion of Ghosts, the discovery that left investigators speechless. When the door swung open, a peculiar scent wafted out, engulfing the vast mansion. Dim light filtered through dust-caked windows. Everything was eerily still. The estate, once a warm nest for Jean Hackman and Betsy Arakawa, now stood desolate, frigid, a space forsaken by time. And then they saw him. For the first time in nearly 2 weeks, someone entered the mansion. A maintenance crew and security team were dispatched to check the house after no contact with Jean Hackman. None expected to face a sight that would haunt them lifelong. The mudroom door creaked open, and they froze. Jean Hackman lay there, motionless, not in bed, not in the living room, but in the mudroom, a cramped, narrow nook, little more than a pass-through between kitchen and outdoors. Beside him, a cane rested askew on the floor. An old pair of sunglasses lay near his right hand. We thought he was just sleeping, but then a worker touched his shoulder, and that's when we all knew. The room sank into utter silence. No one spoke. Only a cold, aching truth remained. Jean Hackman had passed, alone, unnoticed. The forensic report later unveiled grim facts about Jean Hackman's final moments. Time of death. Per his pacemaker data, Jean Hackman breathed his last on February 18th, meaning he'd lain there over a week before discovery. Cause: no trauma marked his body, yet signs of depletion, dehydration, and an empty stomach suggested he'd faded from hunger and exhaustion. No disturbance, no clues of a break-in, no signs of a struggle, just a silent house, steeped in something odd, an unseen, haunting presence. But that wasn't the grimmest part. The 12-acre Santa Fe estate didn't just house Jean and Betsy. 3 dogs lived with them, loyal companions to the pair. But when investigators searched, they found something bizarre. One of the 3 dogs was dead inexplicably. The other 2 survived, roaming the sprawling grounds, untended. No poisoning, no attack marks. The dead dog lay not far from where Betsy was found, as if it had seen it all, then collapsed for reasons no one could name. This raised a huge question. What really happened in that mansion? Betsy went first. Jean Hackman followed. 1 dog died mysteriously, and no one knew what transpired in between. Some investigators, though not superstitious, couldn't deny the mansion felt off. Why was Jean Hackman in such a tiny room, not his bed or couch? Why didn't he call for help with a working phone nearby? Why did 1 dog perish while the others lived? The Santa Fe estate, once Jean Hackman's peaceful retreat, now loomed as a chilling void. Some maintenance workers who entered that day said they felt a shiver down their spines, an odd heaviness despite no air conditioning running. It felt like someone was still there. Maybe it was just our minds, but leaving, I had to look back. I swore something followed me. The mansion was no longer a home. It was a house of ghosts, a place brimming with memories, unsolved riddles, and a piercing emptiness. Jean Hackman had been a legend, a grand soul. But in his life's final ticks, he was left alone in his own home, unknown to all. Yet the key question lingered. Was this just a random string of woes? Or had something or someone orchestrated this tragedy? Police closed the case, finding no crime, but for those who'd stepped into that Santa Fe mansion, certainty eluded them. Something remained untold, and if a secret lay buried, would it ever see light? Chapter 5. Rumors, Theories, and Unanswered Questions. The deaths of Jean Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were a tragedy, but they were also a mystery, a tangle of odd events no one could fully unravel. What truly happened inside that sprawling Santa Fe mansion? What sparked Betsy's sudden end? Why was Jean Hackman left unchecked for days? Police ruled out foul play, but not everyone bought it. 1. Theory number 1. Carbon monoxide poisoning? One early theory came from Jean Hackman's daughter. She suspected carbon monoxide, CO poisoning, a colorless, odorless gas that can kill swiftly in high doses. It wasn't baseless. The mansion's gas heating system could leak CO if faulty. CO symptoms include dizziness, headaches, nausea, disorientation, fatigue, confusion, coma, or death with prolonged exposure. If Betsy succumbed to CO unnoticed, she might have collapsed in the bathroom, unable to call out. Jean, crippled by Alzheimer's, might not have clocked the danger, succumbing slowly to the same gas, too dazed to seek help. But police nixed this. The heating system showed no leaks, and no abnormal CO levels turned up in tests. That door shut, but doubts lingered. 2. Theory number 2. Did Betsy really catch a virus from rodents? Betsy Arakawa's confirmed cause was hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, HPS, a rare rodent-borne illness. But the question nagged. Where did it come from? Neighbors never saw rodents in Hackman's estate. Police found no signs of rodent havoc. Plus, hantavirus is uncommon. Few catch it without direct contact with infected rodent urine, droppings, or saliva. So how did Betsy get it? Some theorized she caught it elsewhere before returning home. But then, why wasn't Jean infected? Certain medical experts questioned the diagnosis, suggesting another cause might have been missed in haste. One thing's sure, Betsy's abrupt exit preceded Jean Hackman's collapse. Was this just a tragic fluke, or something we've yet to grasp? 3. Theory number 3. Was Jean Hackman left to starve? The most debated query was, why wasn't Jean Hackman found sooner? He was a Hollywood icon. He had family, friends, kin. Why did no one check on him for nearly 2 weeks after Betsy's passing? Who was tasked with his care? Medics? None were called. Family? No contact. Neighbors? No sightings of him stepping out. Jean Hackman was forsaken in his own home, day after day, unnoticed. This sparked suspicion about those around him. Did someone know but stay mum? Did someone abandon Jean Hackman, aware he needed aid? Some whispers even claimed he might have been starved, given his empty stomach at discovery. If true, this wasn't just tragedy, it was wrongdoing. But no hard proof pinned anyone. 4. Other theories and lingering questions. Once the news broke, fans and media fired off questions. Did Jean Hackman and Betsy have foes? Was this a covered-up crime? Why did police close the case so fast without deeper digging? Some theories stretched further, hinting at the uncanny. That house wasn't right. I can't explain it, but something's off there. Rumors about the Santa Fe mansion swelled. Some called it cursed, Others sensed hidden truths, but one fact held we might never know the whole story. Jean Hackman's admirers still can't fathom a titan like him fading alone, unseen. Police sealed the case, but questions endure. Was it all just random sorrow? Or did a secret sink with Jean Hackman? We may never get answers, but one thing's certain. Jean Hackman's death will remain one of Hollywood's grandest enigmas. Chapter 6. The Legacy That Lives On. But at what cost? Jean Hackman, a cinematic colossus, a man who'd topped Hollywood's peaks, ended alone amid suspicion and unanswered riddles. But what did he truly leave the world? Do Jean Hackman's triumphs outshine the tragic shadow of his final days? Will the mansion where he spent his last years become a mournful relic or just a forgotten place tied to unsolved mysteries? Above all, will we ever truly know what happened in his closing chapter? 1. A timeless Hollywood titan. Despite the woes of his end, Jean Hackman stands eternal as one of Hollywood's mightiest legends. With over 60 years in film, he wasn't just a stellar actor, he was a symbol of dedication, talent, and resolve. His iconic roles, from Popeye Doyle in The French Connection to Lex Luthor in Superman, stay etched in fans' hearts. Every movie Jean Hackman graced wasn't just a film, it was a slice of Hollywood history. Yet, for all his grand legacy, his death poses a piercing question. Does fame and success really guarantee a happy ending? 2. The Santa Fe Mansion. Sad relic or forgotten shell? After Jean Hackman's passing, his home became a hot topic. Some believe it'll turn into a legacy site, a spot for fans to honor him. Others reckon it's tainted by the tragedies within, a place no one dares enter. Many shudder thinking of this 12-acre estate where Jean Hackman lay for days, unknown. It's no ordinary house anymore. It's a somber memory, a marker of loneliness and unresolved secrets. Debates roll on. Will family hold on to it? Or will it be sold to shed a painful past? Who dare step into the scene of one of Hollywood's oddest tragedies? Whatever its fate, the mansion will forever tie to Jean Hackman's cryptic final days. 3. An incomplete tribute? After word of Jean Hackman's death spread, film lovers and peers planned a tribute event. A ceremony to celebrate his cinematic gifts, to remind the world of his towering legacy. But a snag troubled some. Can we hold a tribute when questions about his death linger? Are we honoring a legend or masking a truth someone once buried? Is someone pushing this to fade away? Does family, friends, or even Hollywood hide something from us? Talk stretched on, but the event went ahead. Hundreds came, old colleagues, collaborators, loyal fans. Praises rang out, his films replayed, classic scenes revisited. Yet a quiet unease hung in the air. Have we really uncovered all there is about Jean Hackman's end? 4. Jean and Betsy, eternal love or cruel fate? For years, Jean Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were a model pair. Betsy stood by Jean through his waning days, his most trusted soul. Jean once called Betsy the greatest gift he'd ever received. But how bitter. They parted in the harshest way, one fallen in a bathroom, the other wasted away alone. It left many wondering, was fate too harsh on them? Two souls so bound only to leave this world in such grim scenes? No one can answer that. 5. The cost of glory? Jean Hackman once had it all, fame, career, love, wealth. But in the end, what remained? A man who'd rocked Hollywood, gone with no one the wiser. A figure who'd faced millions under stage lights, left in his home's darkness. His greatness can't be erased. But his exit, is it a warning? Does fame shield us from loneliness? Does wealth buy a full finale? Are we, after all, left only with ourselves? No one can say. But one truth holds. Jean Hackman's tale isn't just a passing. It's a legend, a tragedy, an endless enigma.